Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Financially Fearless, a financial literacy podcast created by young adults for young adults. In this podcast, we're going to delve into the insight of many seasoned adults who specialize in home ownership, credit, and professional development, offering a lot of comprehensive step-by-step guides to their success and hopefully to ours and your success. I'm your co-host, James Sargent.
And I'm your host, Jalea Allen.
And today, we are very thrilled to have a special guest with us, Miss Rowan. Welcome, Ms. Rowan. I know you're from Experian. Could you please share a little bit about yourself with our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today. My name is Christina Roman, and I'm the Consumer Education and Advocacy Manager for Experian. And so what that means is a fancy way of saying that I help to create and share free educational content about credit for Experian. And we do that in a variety of ways, whether we are working with clients to educate their employees or their customers about how credit works. We also manage an education ambassador program, which is an employee advocacy program at Experian. And that just works to provide Experian employees with credit education and free materials that they can then share with their friends and family members and any nonprofits or organizations that they work with. And that's really important because when people find out that we work for Experian, one of the first questions we get asked is, okay, so what do I do about my credit? Like, if this happened, they start asking you for advice and they don't realize that although we work for Experian, not all of us touch credit. So this is a really great program that gives people the information that they need so that they can have informed discussions with their family members and friends, and they can feel confident in the information that they're giving out. So that's another way that we share information. And then also working with a lot of fantastic nonprofits to provide credit education, going to conferences. So it's a lot of fun. But it's really important to me because I believe wholeheartedly in financial power for all and making sure that people have access to credit education and the knowledge that they need to use credit as the tool that it's meant to be used as.
So for somebody who is new to all of this, what exactly is credit and what is it used for?
Yeah. So simply put, credit is borrowing goods and services and paying for them at a later date under agreed upon terms. So you want to think, if you think of credit, you're thinking of credit cards, things like student loans, home loans, car loans. You're borrowing a certain amount of money and you're agreeing that you're going to pay it back with a certain percent of interest. Now, with a credit card, you'll get access to a line of credit, like a specific amount, and you get to choose each month how much you're going to charge and how much you're going to pay off. But you also will want to know that that credit card comes with a specific interest rate. So if you don't pay it off in full each month, you're going to have to pay the next month that balance plus interest. So it's just having access to borrow and pay back under those agreed upon terms. That's this very simplified way of talking about credit. Now your credit score, let me go back. Now, your credit report is basically that's your credit history. It's your credit file. And what that is when you open a credit account, you would then start the process of, using it, paying it. If it's a car loan, then you have a set day of the month that you're going to have to pay that loan. You have a set amount that you're going to have to pay for that loan. And all of that gets reported to the credit bureaus. So that will be the beginning of your credit report or your credit file. So that loan will show up on your credit report. And then when it's time to pay it, how you pay it will be reported to the credit bureaus. So do you pay it on time? Are you late? Did you miss a payment? All of that will be reported to the credit bureaus. And then when you go to apply for credit in the future, that file will be shared with future potential lenders that you choose to work with. So how you manage your credit is what's listed in that credit report, and that's what's shared. Now, how credit scores work is back in the day, there used to be a process for accessing credit. You had to go directly into the bank, you had to apply, and then you had to go through a whole interview process, and then somebody had to manually check your previous accounts. Now, credit scores are actually an automatic service. It's an algorithm created by credit score modelers like FICO and VantageScore. And what they do is they analyze the information in your credit report through this algorithm, and they produce a credit score. It's usually a 3-digit number the most typical credit score is 350 to 850. And the higher the score, the better. So how your credit file is, like how you previously used credit, is what informs that credit score. So if you've made your payments on time, if you keep your debt low, you're not applying for too much credit at one time, your credit score should be good. Now, if you're new to credit, you have to give it time to build. You have to give it time to show. For some scoring models, maybe 6 months. For others, it could your credit score could show sooner. But they want to see that activity and they want to see that behavior and see how you manage your credit score.
So what are some things that people most time have misconception about with credit, or things that they might be misinformed with?
Yeah, so one big misconception that I encountered even just in my own life was that my parents often told me that credit is bad. Credit is something to avoid. And I was like, okay, well, great. Now, when I became an adult, I didn't really know how to use credit. And rather than just telling somebody that credit is bad, because often you're saying that because maybe it was informed by your own history with credit, and your own experience with credit, actually educating somebody on the mistakes that you made, sharing that information with them and helping them to learn how you fixed your credit, how you dug yourself out of it, the things that you would or wouldn't do with credit. So that way they can make informed decisions about how credit will work in their life. That's most important. And that's kind of the approach that I've taken to credit education with Experian. Is I often like to share that I made every mistake straight out of college because I was never given the information. I never learned how credit worked. And I just wish that rather than telling somebody, oh, credit's bad, you actually took the time to say, okay, here's how my mistakes impacted my life. And this is what I think you should avoid, but also encouraging people to learn how credit works and even if that's something that you have to do together, that's so important, more so than telling somebody that credit is bad, because it really isn't bad. When used properly, credit can be a valuable financial tool that can open doors for major purchases that you want to make in life, like a car, like a home. But also credit affects so much of your life that you don't even think about, whether it's renting an apartment, applying for utilities, applying for a cell phone. Your credit could be used in all of those situations. Even in the job interview process, your credit report could be used in that application process. So it's very important to know how to manage your credit and not just think of it as something to be avoided. So some other misconceptions about credit are that checking your credit hurts your credit score. Now, that's absolutely false. We want you to know what information is in your credit report because your credit report informs your credit score. So we at Experian actually make it available to you completely free. You get to have access to it monthly. You can have your Experian credit report and your FICO score. And what's great about getting your FICO score is that anytime you access your credit score, it's typically going to come with the list of factors that are helping or hurting your credit score. So if you're checking your credit score because you're looking for something in particular, like where are you right now, then it'll tell you, okay, here's where you are, and this is what's working for you, and this is what's hurting you. And that way you can take actionable steps to either improve your credit, or you can say, okay, doing good, I'll leave it where it's at right now, and just continue to check in on it. But if you have improvements that you need to make, that credit score factor will tell you, okay, maybe you have too much debt. Maybe you need to reduce your debt, or your payment history isn't that great. That's something that you really need to focus on. So that's why I always encourage people, check your credit report often. I always encourage you to use our free Experian credit monitoring service, because then it gives you access to that credit score and it helps you to know where you are and how you can improve and what's working for you.
So from what I heard earlier, you said that when you were younger, you wish you knew what credit was. So what are some of the systems or programs that you used in order to get that information?
Are you asking me like what did I use personally?
Yeah, you can go
Or
into
like,
like what you did personally and like some resources that you know now that are available.
yeah. So when I was going through my journey, I didn't know a lot about Experian, to be perfectly honest. I didn't even realize that they were one of the 3 national credit bureaus. But I had some friends that they had some information about credit. I think what's really important, and one thing that I really encourage people to do, is to talk about money with your friends and to talk about credit with your friends, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think I didn't realize how much I didn't know about credit until I started saying like, wow, I'm really having a hard time with this debt that I put on my credit card. And my friend was like, well, what did you do with your credit card? And then he was like, well, credit is not free money. You have to pay it back. And I was like, oh yeah, sure. And he was like, no, like, wait a minute. You have to figure out how this credit works. And that was kind of like a light bulb moment of like, okay, this is actually very serious. And his mom at the time was an accountant. And she was somebody that I knew very well. And I had worked with previously. He'd been my friend for a long time. And so I went to her and I said, okay, I don't know how credit works. I'm getting a lot of phone calls from collections and I feel like I may have ruined my credit. And she was the person that gave me the resources. She actually gave me a budget to look at, and she talked to me about credit. But even then, it was still something that just seemed so big and so beyond anything that I could grasp. And I just always felt like I was buried. And so I started to look online at resources on how to manage your credit. And I came across some great influencers that actually we now work with through our Experian credit chats. But I had seen a lot of bloggers and podcasters and YouTubers that talked about money. And so I started to watch those videos. I started to read those articles. And I was introduced to credit card interest payoff calculator. And so I had 3 credit cards at the time. And so what this person told me to do was to put my credit cards in this interest calculator and to put when I want to pay them off by. Because at the time I had no idea. I was making my minimum payments on my cards. My balances weren't going down. I had no idea what I was doing wrong. And so then I realized, oh, making only your minimum payment is going to keep you in that cycle of debt forever. You have to actually actively make more than your minimum payment. You have to be intentional about how much you're paying off if you really want to get out of a debt by X amount of time. So I use this credit card interest calculator, and I put the credit card amount that I had in there, the interest rate, and when I would like to be out of debt. And it actually gave me a set amount that I needed to pay on each credit card to get out of debt by that time. And then, so I started to take action. I started to do that, and I started to see my credit card actually go down. But I was still doing that research. At the time, like, this fire was lit in me to figure out, like, okay, how can I get out of debt faster? So I researched things like the snowball method and the avalanche method. And if you've never heard of that, those are 2 popular debt payoff methods that work for credit cards. So with the avalanche method, if you have multiple credit cards, you would tackle your highest interest credit card debt first while making your minimum payments on your other credit cards. And so that essentially saves you money over time. Now, it may take you a little bit longer, but it will save you money over time. So you pay off that high interest credit card, and then you move to the next highest interest rate credit card. What that's going to do is it's going to save you money. Now, the other popular method is the snowball method. So if you have multiple credit cards, you start with the smallest balance and you really hit that smallest balance hard while still making the minimum payments on your other credit cards. And this is more for momentum. This is meant to be that, like, all right, you feel like you're getting somewhere because you're seeing that balance drop. And then you move, once you've paid that off, you move to the next highest interest rate credit card. And you go from there. You keep going until all of your debt is paid off. And people find that one to be very motivating because they see it happening right away. They see that card disappearing right away. And then what's important about it is that once that card is paid off, you don't touch it because it's not going to do you any good to pay it off. And then you have this balance available and you go ahead and charge on that card while you're still trying to pay those other cards off. So it's really important. Set that card aside, don't touch it, and focus on those other cards. So those are some methods that I use that help me to really tackle my debt and resources that I use. Now that I work at Experian, when I first started working for them, I was their social media specialist, and my boss tasked me with creating credit education on social media for them. And at the time I was like, you're crazy. Like, I made every mistake with credit that I could make. And I don't think people are going to want to hear from somebody like that. And he was like, no, that's what makes you perfect for the job, because you actually know what mistakes people make. You know what questions that people have about credit. If you come from this perfect perspective where you have always known about credit, it's kind of hard to identify with. It's hard to relate to. So we went live on different social media platforms, and we talked to people like humans, and we met people where they were. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And I realized that Experian has a lot of free educational resources that I didn't even know about when I wasn't affiliated with Experian. So that's been a big goal of mine, is to share things like our Ask Experian blog, to share our weekly credit chats, to share our social media channels, because we do a lot of credit education there. But yeah, that's what I highly recommend. If you're interested in learning about credit, go directly to the source. And the source would be one of the 3 major credit bureaus. And I definitely recommend Experian.
Awesome, awesome. I don't mind me jumping in here. I remember the first time when we heard you talk, I think it was the 2022 CFA conference. I remember you were telling us that story of when you had so much debt, but you were able to recover from it. I know a lot of young people who are currently in the situation, same as you, who have a lot of debt or are raking up a lot of debt and do not know how to get out of it, how to work their way out of it, and kind of feel like a little lost right now. You have anything you want to say to them? Just what would you say to them? What would you say to yourself just in the
Mhm.
future?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I would say is you're not alone. And sometimes debt can feel isolating and financial issues can feel isolating, but you're not alone. And I think if you just ask questions, if you start talking to people about it, you'll realize that you're a lot more alike other people than you may think. And we're all kind of going through these issues. And so what you have to do is to be intentional about your finances, to be honest with yourself about, okay, how did I get here? Did I spend beyond my means? Do I currently have habits that need to change? Maybe it's eating out a lot. Maybe it's subscriptions. I myself have to go through, my husband and I have a very serious plan to go through all of the payments that we make right now and identify, like, do we have subscriptions that we're paying for every single month that we never use? Do we have money going out here that we don't even realize? And I know I personally do. I think I've subscribed, we cut cable and I subscribe to every subscription, which I think right now may be more than what our cable actually was. So be very honest with yourself. One great tip that you can do is to look back through maybe the last 3 months of banking statements and look at where your money is going. And I did this when I was first going through my journey, but I actually highlighted, okay, this is the number of times that I ate out in one color. This is the number of times I went to Target in one color. And I actually had a no Target month for myself one time. And I didn't realize how much I spent at Target, whether it's emotional spending or like on necessities. But you identify those areas where your money is going that you don't even realize. And you say, okay, how can I change that? How can I develop a budget that I can realistically live within? It has to be realistic, because if you go super militant and you cut out all the fun in your life, then it's not something that you can stick to. So create a budget that allows for a little bit of fun, but still helps you to get your money under control. And then I recommend accessing all of your credit card statements. If it's your credit cards that you're in debt with, access that credit card statement, look at it, because it will tell you the interest rate. It'll tell you how much you owe. It'll tell you what your minimum payment is. And from there, you can create a payment plan. Use something like that interest rate calculator and put in how much you owe, what your interest is, and when you'd realistically like to be out of debt. and start working toward chipping away at that debt. If it's a car loan, maybe it's something where you can call your lender and talk to them about your balance. What can you do? Come up with a plan for how you're going to pay that on time every single month. But it may just come down to really realistically looking at your spending and identifying areas that you can cut out that will allow you to have a little bit more cash flow. Or maybe it can come down to you taking on a little bit of extra work, if that's a possibility. If there's a side hustle, if there's like Uber Eats or something like that you can do that will help you to bring in just a little bit of extra income that you can then put toward that debt to help you get it under control. Those are just a few steps that you could take.
I can definitely relate to that because I know my food is starting to rack up on that credit card. But something that I noticed is it takes a certain type of mindset or some type of resilience in order to get through a situation like that, where it's like you have to stop these habits that you have continuously already been doing. And so, what was your process of getting through those habits that you had and trying to stop those habits to make better habits?
I think, honestly, I think this came out of a fight or flight kind of a scenario, because I was in a position where I needed a car, and my car had broken down, and when I went to apply for the auto loan, I didn't realize how much I had impacted my credit by missing payments, by taking on, having high credit card balances. I didn't realize what the effect had been on my credit. And when I went to apply for a car, I was with my mom, and the person, we had this really cute, I think it was a Nissan Sentra or something like that. And the person sat down, we went through my finances, and it was a used car. It wasn't very expensive, but when he ran my credit, he was like, okay. He's like, I can approve you at a 19% interest rate. And the look of horror on my mom's face, and you could tell he was embarrassed to tell me like that amount, and he really wasn't that interested in working with me. Like his tone totally changed, and that was my like aha moment that, wow, okay, I've done something really bad, because I don't think I'm going to be able to get a car. And after that, my mom like wouldn't talk to me. She told my dad, and my dad flipped his lid on me. My dad like just that was a conversation I'll never forget in all of my life, like how upset he was with me. And it was because they had told me to be careful with credit, that credit was not good. But they had never given me the tools to actually do something with it to help me avoid those mistakes. And again, I was an adult at the time. I can't completely blame my parents, but that was one of those moments that was really awful, because I never like to disappoint my parents. And I felt like I had really disappointed them. And so that was a moment that I was like, okay, we got to make change. And also I had at the time, my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, he had excellent credit, and he was like, okay, don't worry, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get you a car. He's like, I'll co-sign on your loan. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you're going to co-sign on my loan? We're dating. I don't know, like if that's such a great idea. And he was like, no, I see a future with you. So I'm going to help you, because once we get married, you can't be bringing bad credit into our marriage. I want to buy a house. And so he actually helped me to apply for, he signed on as a co-signer for my car loan. And that filled me with a lot of responsibility for his credit, because now his credit was dependent on me making my payments on time. So it was a series of things like that led to me to really start to make that change, to realize, okay, something's got to give here, because I'm not doing it right. Now, the problem is that was back in had to have been 2008, maybe 2008 that happened. And if we look at now at the high interest rate environment that we're in and the cost of everything right now, it was awful then when I made mistakes, but almost now it feels as though there's no room for error. And so that's why podcasts like this are so important. That's why educational bloggers and influencers are so important in this space, because we've got to relay that that you have to act now. If you have debt, get out of debt. If you are doing anything that's hurting your credit, get in the know about what that is. That way you can start to make changes now. So that way, when the environment hopefully calms down and you can take advantage of it, you'll be in the position to do so. Because one missed payment on your credit, of whether it's a credit card or car loan, one missed payment reported to the credit bureaus will hurt you for 7 years. So that's a long time. And if in that time frame, the market settles down and you find that you're in a position where you would like to take advantage of like a lower interest rate than it's at right now, it may be difficult if you don't have your credit prepared to do so. So that's kind of why I recommend that people really start to take action now, because you want to set yourself up for success in the coming years. And the only way to do that is to look at your financial picture and figure out what changes that you need to make.
Well, thank you, Ms. Roman. And if you liked the conversation so far, please make sure to remember to follow us at Financially Fierce, and let's continue the conversation. Our goal is to make financial information easier to understand as well as more accessible. So please share this podcast where you can, and remember to be financially fierce.